Denji, the protagonist of Chainsaw Man, often considered to be overly simplistic, too perverted, or generally weak compared to the cast he shares the spotlight with. While there may be truth to these claims, I believe Denji is a much richer character who has a lot to unpack for readers. Within the character of Denji, there are layers. On the surface, we have Denji who is outgoing, simple, overly focused on sexual gratification. And on the deeper, true level, we have the Denji who is flawed, insecure, and has no true sense of self. With this, I hope to create a broader understanding of Denji, and bring to light why I personally believe him to be a well-structured protagonist, and one fitting for the world of Chainsaw Man. From this point forward, there are going to be spoilers for Chainsaw Man. If you're not fully caught up with it, I'd recommend reading that and then coming back. Chainsaw Man, one of Weekly Shounen Jump's newer properties, beginning in 2018 and recently ending with both a Part 2 and an anime adaptation confirmed. It has been praised by many for its beautiful art, interesting plot, and bombastic action that continues to rev up the stakes as the plot moves forward. With Chainsaw Man has come much discussion, with the point of contention being the protagonist, Denji. Let's take a look at who Denji is, and what elements comprise him. For starters, he is our protagonist, the titular Chainsaw Man. A 16-year-old who has been simply getting by on odd jobs, trying to pay off the inherited debt from his father who had passed away. Denji is a seemingly simple individual, obsessed with ladies and gung-ho about getting into danger at every turn. He is also very eager to please everyone around him. Denji is often compared to a dog, as he's willing to comply and submit to those around him. This is at first fun and ironic due to Pochita, the chainsaw devil he merges with, resembling a dog, but holds much more sinister implications about his personality. As the protagonist of the series, Denji is shown to be a dynamic character. A dynamic character is progressively changing as the plot moves forward, often learning a lesson or undergoing a massive change. From the beginning of the series, where Denji is simply focused on surviving and pleasing others, to the end of the manga where he has newfound resolve and goals, he very much fits the bill of a dynamic character. Moving from this, in fiction, a character typically has wants and needs. Wants are generally misguided, seen as a temporary fix. Needs being what are hidden beneath the surface. The unacknowledged needs are hidden beneath the wants. Now with Denji, the want versus need aspect of a character is glaringly obvious, as he obsessively puts up his wants on display through his fixation on sexual gratification and pleasing others. In contrast to this, what Denji needs is security. He needs comfort, and he needs a purpose to live for. Following Denji throughout the story, we can slowly see that he's not certain of his wants. This will be relevant later, but it is important to note that by blindly following his perceived wants, Denji finds himself in trouble more often than not. We see this through his decision to join the Devil Hunters, when he fights the Bat and Leech Devil for power, and most importantly, his interactions in time with Rize. As he pursues his wants, we begin to notice the cracks in Denji's personality. The first notable event where we begin to see Denji's cracks forming is when he touches Power's breast. He went in with the expectation that it would be the best thing to ever happen to him, only for him to find out that Power stuffs and it left him feeling empty. Another good example of this is when Rize offers up the tale of the town and country mouse. One lives a lavish life, but is often faced with turmoil. The other is free of worry, but it doesn't live a flashy and ritzy life like the other one. Denji quickly chose the town mouse, reflecting in him that he'd rather live a life full of trouble than go back to his previous life where he was living in poverty. Now that our initial breakdown of Denji is out of the way, who is Denji really? Denji, despite coming off as easygoing and simple, has dark secrets to expose. There is a degree of secrecy to Denji and his past, as it is drip-fed to the viewer. First, it is noticeable that Denji is somewhat of a fractured character. He has moments where he seems confident, followed up by clouded judgment. In addition to his wishy-washy nature, Denji clearly has no sense of self. He willingly follows orders and tries to be what he perceives that people want him to be, thus making the comparisons to being like a dog all the more relevant. Denji lives life as if he's trying to survive, as opposed to living life as most would. It's as if it will be his last meal. He sleeps in strange ways, and he's very wary of new people. A good example of this survival-based living can be seen when Himeno goes to give him a kiss during the outing with the Devil Hunters. Himeno goes in to kiss Denji, to which she instead vomits in his mouth. Due to the way Denji lived previously, he swallows her vomit instinctively as he tried to find nourishment in any way that he could. Moving from this, Denji is also seen to be very improper and rude to most people, not properly conducting himself in front of others. He's standoffish to new people, as stated a bit ago. He's not respectful to those who are considered his higher-ups and often speaks his mind unwarranted. Denji is often berated for this, in addition to his lack of intelligence. Now, when compared to the others, Denji is notably less intelligent. This is due to him not getting a proper education in his youth, highlighted during his time spent with Rise. All of these traits can be traced to his background and his upbringing. As viewers, the past of Denji's life is delivered through periodic flashbacks. These scenes give the impression of a child living alone, struggling to make ends meet. Burdened by the weight of his father's immense debt, Denji was forced to live on a survival basis. But what's more than this is the realization made towards the end of the manga that Denji was severely abused by his father, leading Denji to eventually kill his father in what can be assumed to be self-defense. Now going over his character as we know it, a lot of his traits line up with those of a child who has went through severe abuse. Denji being dim-witted and not understanding social cues can derive from his father stunting his growth and never teaching him how to conduct himself in these situations. Lack of education comes in here as well, as it can be assumed that his father had no interest in his development. Most notable from his now confronted past is that of his submissive nature and tendency to find himself being groomed by others. As an abused child, Denji finds himself doing whatever he can to make himself keep in good favor with those he likes. Through the flashbacks and frequent use of the door imagery, it becomes beyond evident that Denji suffers from intense repression due to his bad upbringing. Recontextualizing his actions and making his Chapter 1 appearance make more sense. However, instead of resigning himself to death, Denji meets Pochita and forms a pact with the Chainsaw Devil, allowing the two to find newfound hope and purpose for the future. Following up on Denji's abused and distraught past, it's important to examine the bonds that he formed throughout the story of Chainsaw Man. The bonds a character forms and how they are formed are just as informative as the backstory itself. Beginning with Pochita, Denji and Pochita are seen together from Chapter 1 and continue their relationship throughout the manga. The two found one another during a time of weakness, and both needed a miracle to save themselves. Denji, now burdened with the debts inherited from his father, and Pochita recovering from the wounds he had inflicted upon him. Both throughout the story of Chainsaw Man have a relationship based upon helping one another in a time of need. This all ultimately culminating during the final acts of the manga, where Pochita takes over for a mentally destroyed Denji, as Pochita tries to fulfill Denji's wishes he has shared with him throughout their time together, their bond being strong enough that they were able to come together and defeat Makima in the end. But this alone would not have been enough for Denji, as his other relationships proved just as important to him. Moving from Pochita, we have the camaraderie between Denji and Aki. In the beginning, Aki and Denji couldn't be further from friends, with the two swearing that they would not work with the other. But by the end of their time together, they have a large impact on one another, with Aki helping Denji find structure to his life, and Denji filling an empty spot in Aki's heart, as we learn that Aki has experienced loss more than he would like to. In the same vein as Aki, we have Power. Power and Denji had their initial strife, with Power even willing to send Denji to his death to fulfill her own goals. Though, this was short-lived as the two grew close, with their relationship bordering on that of lifelong siblings. The trio fall beautifully into the trope of found family, finding solace in one another despite each of them coming from their own backgrounds and troubles. Living together, quarreling like family would, all three of them by the end had genuine love for each other. During the time of Chainsaw Man, Denji also shares a symbolic bond with Rise, the Bomb Devil. The two meet, and a charming relationship blossoms between the two. Unfortunately though, it would not stay that way as Rise reveals her true colors and betrays Denji's trust as it is revealed she was sent to assassinate him. The parallels between the two are no coincidence, both growing up in abusive settings, being molded into something they are not. Tools to be used by a higher power. Tragedy is nothing Chainsaw Man is afraid to employ, with it primarily stemming from one source in one way or another. And that source being Makima, the control devil. The ties Makima and Denji form are considerably important and impressive, as the two both contrast one another as well as share similarities. Makima as the control devil is the embodiment of selfishness, pushing those around her into place to fulfill her wishes in any way that she needs, sacrificing anyone and anything to employ her rule, even going as far to build up the life Denji yearned for, the family he shared with Aki and power, being stripped away from him by her. Meanwhile, as seen throughout Chainsaw Man, Denji is quite the opposite. He is a selfless individual, shackled to those he presents himself to, much like a dog on a leash. He considers himself insignificant, even admitting to Makima at one point that he does not deserve a normal life. Where the two are alike is found in a multitude of ways, the first being their goals coming from a place of genuine concern and debatably a place of good. Makima desires to erase tragedy from the world, as Denji aims to do as much good as he can. The divergence comes from the methods used to achieve these goals. Makima's sacrificial nature and heartlessness towards others is nothing short of evil, where with Denji, even in spite of violence, is very protective of the public and doesn't want to see anyone die who doesn't deserve it. Secondly would be the concept of idolization. Makima idolizes the Chainsaw Man, heralding him as many others have as a hero, one she can use to accomplish her goals. On the flip side is Denji's idolization of Makima. He sees her as completely desirable and pushes himself to get closer to her in any way that he can. This idolization comes to a point by the climax of the battle between Denji and Makima, with Denji dejectedly admitting that Makima never saw him for who he truly was, only for the power that he held. Finally, there is the parallel that comes from the exposition in the final chapter, it being revealed that the control devil yearned for love and affection, the same way Denji has, even if he hadn't acknowledged it. Denji, this time at least, is able to make good on it, as in the same chapter, we see that the control devil is reborn, with Denji shouldering the responsibility to help her see her dreams come true. Having the bonds of Denji examined, as well as the elements that comprise his character, we can now look at how all this matters. With the way Denji's past is told, through flashbacks and small snippets of info dropped through the plot, the tale of abuse and shattered upbringing were handled excellently by Fujimoto. Even with all the information the reader is given, there are still questions that remain, such as what happened to Denji's mother, and what was the extent of abuse Denji had to endure. These gaps being left intentionally empty by Fujimoto to create not only a realistic interpretation of repression through Denji, but also to create mystery that can be answered in the future of Chainsaw Man, as it still has a part 2 to look forward to. The actions we see Denji take throughout the story all feel correct and fitting in line with the character. No choice feels arbitrary just to make the story proceed. The realism to Denji's character being one of his strongest attributes as we see him evolve from naive to defeated to reborn. In spite of the continual tragedy he faces, he ultimately still follows a path of good. Going down a path that could have pushed many to darkness, Denji maintains the ideals that he has from the very beginning. The metamorphosis from basic simp to grown hero that must be strong for Naruto is why Denji not only is an exceptional protagonist, but why his character matters so much to the story of Chainsaw Man. In closing, I hope to have illuminated why I consider Denji to be a prime example of a good protagonist. One that not only fits the story well, but also handles a tricky backstory and the concept of childhood abuse in a way that not many shonen manga have. Denji is much more than the basic simp that many accredit him to be, and hopefully this has given you a newfound appreciation for him. I just want to say thank you so much to those who have watched to the end. This analysis has taken a bit of time to put together, so I really hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe and like the video. Also leave any feedback for me in the comments section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Once again, thank you.